All right, let's get this show on the road, shall we, folks? Okay. So what's going on? Everyone doing all right?
Yep.
Surviving. It's week 10, right smack dab in the middle of the semester. Everyone doing okay?
Yep.
I know this is the hard part for a lot of folks, right? This is where the marathon that we're running starts to show a little bit of its stress and its age. But hang in there. Does anyone have any big plans for spring break next week? Texas. All right.
No, taxes.
Oh, well, Texas would have been cooler, but taxes, yes. There are two certainties in life, death and taxes. So make sure you're paying the tax man before April 15th. I still got to do mine. I put it off every year, and every year I'm going to say I'm going to do it in like February, and then I don't do it until April. So I will probably be doing taxes next week as well, Kevin. Is anyone going to do anything fun for spring break next week? Were you aware that next week is spring break? Did I just like make some people's day? Yeah, so no class next week. The entire campus is going to be closed for spring break. San Diego. I like it. Good times. Can't go wrong with San Diego. At least hopefully the weather will be nicer in San Diego than it is going to be up here. It's been raining. Yeah. Actually, I think if I remember correctly, next week here at least, it's supposed to be pretty nice. So it's going to be kind of inclement for the next 2-3 days, but it should be pretty nice next week. So maybe we'll all get an opportunity to enjoy a good spring break. I know I don't need to remind you guys because y'all are veterans in this, but the entire campus is going to be closed starting Monday. You know, spring break runs through Monday through Saturday, so please, please plan accordingly. Naturally, the design lab and all of our campus services are going to be shut down during that time period, so keep that in mind.
So 2 weeks to do homework.
Technically, you will have 2 weeks to do homework. Yeah, we'll get to that, of course, naturally at the end of class today. Game Developers Conference. Who all's going? A whole bunch of you guys? Almost everyone. Great. For those of you that are not participating, you'll get a full after-action report from all of us, once we get back in April after spring break. Unfortunately, I won't see you guys the following week. I'm heading down tomorrow, so I'm going to be there all day. I'm not normally on campus on Wednesdays, but I'm going to be very much out of the loop. So if you email me tomorrow, I'm not even going to see it until, first thing Thursday morning. I have, unwisely chosen to travel to San Francisco tomorrow morning. If I was a smart person, I probably would have went down tonight, got in a hotel, and, went to the conference, at a reasonable time tomorrow. But since I'm driving into the city, or since I'm driving to the BART station in San Francisco tomorrow morning, I got to leave like 6 a.m., to be in the city to be at the conference when it opens at 10 o'clock. So, early day for me, but worth it nonetheless. I'm expecting a pretty exciting show. For those of you that have been watching, and you should be watching this stuff because this is definitely the industry that you're actively pursuing. A lot of good things are coming out of the Game Developers Conference already. Technically, the conference is going on right now, and then tomorrow the expo opens as a supplement to the conference. If you want a good look, CG Channel already starting to post a lot of the good news coming out of the Game Developers Conference. So check it out. There's been some fun announcements so far. Of course, there's some big ones. Last week there's some press release came out. It was inevitable. Adobe's raising prices, right? It was inevitable, And I think for us, most importantly, hey, we had a new version of Substance Painter last week, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and I've been playing around with it. I saw that announcement and I immediately went and downloaded the new app, and it's pretty great. There's not any really new features, but they've overhauled the interface and they've really done some good things when it comes to performance. So it's a solid update. I'm excited to see what they're going to be doing over the next couple months as they roll into their 18.2 development cycle. Yeah.
Is there anywhere that has the talks later on after the conference?
Yes.
There's a lot of talks going on during this week before Friday that I wish I could see.
So the question was, is there any way that we can go and see all the presentations and the lectures and the conference talks as they're happening? Unfortunately, we can't do it as they're happening because that's what they want you to pay a ticket price. But the Game Developers Conference does an excellent job of posting all of their materials, all of their stuff, if you will, after the fact. I don't know when it usually happens, but it's usually not long after the conference wraps, a couple weeks or so. Stay tuned to their website. because they usually say, hey, we posted everything, you can go download it and free. I think you still need to sign into the site, but then you get access to all of their conference materials, the conference talks, the seminars, the slides. Almost all of it's videotaped. Shoot, if you go on to YouTube and just do GDC 2017, I'm sure you'll find all of the conference talks on there. So
GDC has its own YouTube channel.
There it is.
And it's got all the talks from, I think, every GDC.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty open when it comes to their content after the conference is wrapped, because they want to, obviously they want you to come and pay a couple $1,000s to hear these people talk, but after that's over, they do the right thing to make all those resources, well, they don't make the resources, but they make the information available for free. When you go to a lot of these conference seminars and talks, they give you things, materials and project files and ideas to play with. So at the very least, you'll be able to hear the information coming directly from the horse's mouth.
They tend to release at least from what I know, since having done GDC last year and then watching some of the talks as they progress through YouTube, they release like 1 or 2 every week, and they just keep going for like the next 8 months.
Until it's all out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So the answer to your question is yes, but not right now. Okay, for us though, in addition to Game Developers Conference, we're going to shift gears a little bit today. We've been focusing on small props and assets over the last couple weeks, and today we're going to kind of start building our final project in here. Our goal for the conclusion of this course is to build an entire game level. And of course, naturally, we're going to need to have a whole series of props and assets and buildings and other pieces inside of our world that will make this entire level feel real and feel inhabited by any number of things. Okay. So today, we're going to focus on the construction, or this week, and really it's 2 weeks because of spring break, you guys are going to focus on the construction of a blacksmith shop. Okay. We're going to be doing 2 different things at once today. The first thing that we're going to be doing is looking at some substance stuff. And we have some lab exercises that we're going to do. And then towards the end of the class, we're going to look at strategies and ideas that will help us construct a building, okay? Because our modeling process needs to change ever so slightly when we're constructing big things like a building, okay? Now, for our homework this week, in addition to constructing a building, well, let me rephrase that. I only want you to focus on the construction of the building. I don't want you to worry about the UVs yet, because how we UV map this going forward, or how we create the textures for a big building, is directly tied to how we create the UV map, and I want to save that for a future conversation when we get back from spring break in April. Okay, so just focus exclusively on the geometry this time.
So no UV map.
You can go ahead and get started on the UVs if you'd like. I have zero problem with that. However, you may have to go back in and remap some of this with this new information that's coming out in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, but it doesn't hurt at all to get ahead of it. It really doesn't. UV mapping, yeah, it takes some time. It's kind of laborious, but once it's done, it's done. It's done. Okay. So we're going to come back and talk about this here in a minute, but I just want to kind of set the stage a little bit. This blacksmith shop, in the big picture of things, is something that we're going to be living with throughout the rest of the semester. Okay. So you'll hear me say this again at the end of class. I want you to pick something that you like, make something that you're in love with, because this is going to be a part of your final project, okay, in this class. For your final project, you're going to be building 3 big buildings that are all going to need to look like they're part of the same world, okay. More on that as we get closer to the end of the day, or end of the class, excuse me. All right, should we jump in a little bit? Yeah. All right. So if we go back into the week 10 module on Canvas, you'll find that I've put a couple things in here. Okay, let's go back in there. And specifically, we have 2 things that we're going to be looking at. I want to start, we have a small lab assignment which will allow us to continue to flex our muscles painting things instead of substance. It's just a very simple sci-fi panel. More on that as we get closer to our dedicated lab time today. However, I have a little playground for us to explore some really important concepts and ideas, and it's this blacksmith shop sign. So let's just download this real fast and take a look at its contents. All right. Excuse me. Wait for Modo to launch. I want to load in song. Or maybe not load. There it is. Now it's going. All right. So if we go into the model tab, take a look at what we got here. This is the environment or the model file that we're going to be playing with today. Now, everything's modeled for you already. You're welcome. Okay. This is something that I made a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But our focus today is about baking. Okay. We want to be able to use some of the geometry inside of Modo to create a whole series of texture maps for us automatically. Okay. And it's pretty easy to do that. And I wanted to kind of walk through this process with you today. So let's jump over into our UV Edit Layout tab and start looking at the UVs that have been created for my little shop sign. Turn off the wireframes real fast. Sometimes those wireframes make it really quite a significant challenge in understanding the volume and the form that we're working with. If you look at the UVs, there they are. It's a pretty simple model for the most part. Geometrically, there's not actually a whole lot going on. UVs, also not a whole lot going on. However, I want to, how I unwrapped all these UVs is not magical, but there is some thinking behind here that I want to share with you guys. Specifically, if you start to zoom in and look at some of these UV islands, you can see that there is some overlapping polygons in the actual UVs themselves. Now, those red areas on the UVs, why are those potentially a problem in the grand context of textures?
They're on top of the other.
Yes, we have two polygons that are sharing the exact same space. So we're making a coloring book with these, right? So what's going to happen when I start painting in that area?
You're gonna have some weird sort of color stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two polygons are going to share and receive the exact same texture information, right? And I'm a simple dude, right? And I always go back to the idea that this is a coloring book, okay? A coloring book that we get to paint outside the lines. Rock and roll, right? So we get to be a little bit sloppy on the outside, but the inside we have to be very mindful of it, okay? See where it's red in here? Any time I paint in here or add a material, those two polygons are going to share the exact same texture information. It's as if I have a gigantic crayon, and I can color here, and both those polygons are going to get the same stroke, okay? These are not necessarily deal breakers for us, okay? We can have them in there strategically. We just got to be careful with it, okay? So whenever I am unwrapping these things, I always try to look and see where I have overlapping UVs. Now, at times, not the end of the world. Other times, we'll absolutely want to remove them, okay? In this specific moment, let's explore for a second what is actually overlapping, okay? So I can see that we got a lot of overlapping stuff in here. Well, what is that part of the mesh? It's this inside bit on one of these top brackets, and actually it's a theme that continues to repeat over and over and over again throughout the entirety of my geometry, okay? Now, I have to ask myself, in here, how's it going to look in the actual final finished textured object itself? What's going to be in there? Shadows, right? It's going to be all darkness for the most part. It really kind of doesn't matter where and how we shine our light on this particular part of the model. It's almost 9 times out of 10 is going to be in shadow, or it's going to be so small within the frame that the audience, the gamer, is never going to see it. So do I care? No, I don't care, right? It's an area that I can kind of take back from, because this is something that the gamer is never ever going to see, right? We live in an uncanny valley here in Modo, right? We can get as close to our models as we want, okay? Is my gamer ever, if this is on the side of a building, right? Is the person playing this game or interfacing with this model ever going to be able to get way up here? Probably not, right? Probably not, unless this is like, I don't know, some sort of like crazy bug game where you get to fly around and fly and land on stuff, right? And if that's the case, I have a different strategy. But for most things, you're never going to see it, right? So why do we care about it, right? This is the moment where, as an artist, we can kind of get away with murder. Our models don't necessarily have to be technically perfect on every single individual polygon and pixel. There are more pixels, or excuse me, there are polygons that are more important than others. This is a low priority polygon, okay? Now, I can fix this problem. Okay, I can. I can go in there and I can re-UV map this. How long do you think that solution is going to take to fix? Maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, going in, unwrapping, sewing, moving things together. I mean, I can really fix this problem if I wanted to. In the grand context, I'm going to say move on. Okay, because I got, let's see, 4 of these little brackets that all share the exact same problem. I'm going to save myself 10 or 15 minutes per bracket and just move on. They're never going to see it, right? Out there in the production world, time is absolutely money, okay? It's a hard idea for us to wrap our brains around here inside of an academic environment because you're not getting paid to do this, right? But out there in the real world, there's going to be someone like me standing over your shoulder saying, you need to move on because I can't afford you to spend any more time fiddling with a little bracket, okay? What's most important is the complete project, not how technically perfect that little bracket is, okay? We can take back from some areas, we can add in others, right? Also, and this is something that I just find absolutely amazing, right? The level of details in our assets are skyrocketing. Of course, Game Developers Conference is going on right now, so if you look at the stuff that's coming out of Unity, the game engine that we're going to be using for this class here in a minute, I cannot spell today. There we go. So they just had a big keynote last night. It's pretty great. We talked about Book of the Dead, and we showed it when it came out earlier in the semester. And they do a deep dive on how they created this wonderful game during their keynote presentation. And it's amazing how much of that is actual geometry, right? This is not a trick. This is not like a camera fake. Not everything's just a flat two-dimensional texture. It's all assets, geometric assets. In the context, there are thousands of models in this one level, right? 15 minutes may not seem like a big deal to fix a couple of UV problems, but when you have a couple hundred models that you need to finish in a week, 15 minutes turns into a showstopper, right? Think about it. Think about that for a second. If you're a production artist out there working on a game, you may have 100 models that you need to model UV and texture within a week, okay? You're talking like 10 models a day. I mean, you want to fly through this stuff. You may only be budgeted an hour to make UV and texture that little sign. Maybe. Your creative supervisor is going to be the person that's really in charge of the answer to that question. But point being, we can get away with murder. Not everything has to be perfect, okay? All right. With that said, let's go back over into Modo real fast and finish up our model prep, because the UVs are looking pretty good, or good enough for me to move on. Let's talk about model prep. Okay, this is something that we've been doing a lot of in this class. Let's galvanize this sequence for us. Once we've modeled, have all of our UVs, where's our next stop? Game Tools tabs. You got it. Game Tools, right there. Okay, now I'm going to clean up my interface a little bit. I don't necessarily need to see my schematic or the preview window at the moment. Okay. However, I do want to see my UV view. I'm also going to turn off in this top viewport the visibility of my lights and my cameras. I don't need that for what I'm doing. We'll zoom in, take a little look-see here. All right. So the Game Tools tab, what's the function of this next step? What are we trying to create? Yeah, specifically what type of edges? You got it. We need to start creating all of our edge weights, and of course our other maps section is going to be the home for all of this data. So let's go ahead and fire it off, excuse me. So our vertex map collection of tools over here is going to bring open all of the tools that we need to very quickly establish all these hard and soft edges. Now the part the tool that I almost immediately fire off first is this guy. This one's going to create hard edges around all of your UV boundaries. This is a natural, good first step. Bloop. Okay. Once we click that button, you can see that the other maps section in our list area populates with all the vertex normal information that we just created. Inside of our toolbar, I love this button because it allows me to very quickly preview the hard edges that I've just created. And I can see exactly what the computer has done. Yeah, and it's done some good things in here. Now, it's gone ahead, it's looked at all the boundaries. If you look carefully down here, It's looking at all the boundaries of our UVs, and it's creating hard edges for them, okay? Good first step, but really what I want to do, and a supplement to this workflow, is this guy. This button here is going to basically ask the computer to go in and solve every polygon transition. And if it's greater than 40 degrees, it's going to make a soft edge. If it's less than 40 degrees, hard edge, okay? Let's go ahead and do it real fast. Almost all of our shading problems get resolved pretty quickly when we start to fire this off. And you see that a lot of stuff down here is been transitioned into a hard and soft edge. The links, though, and this is really what I wanted to show you guys. As I'm going through this, yeah, this is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with a lot of this stuff. This is going to be this is going to be maybe like a metal frame, wood on the inside, and the final texture. But let's look at the links to the chain here for a second. Okay. Now there's some areas in here that I want to start to adjust when it comes to the hard and soft edges. I don't want all of my edge loops, my vertical edge loops along the model, being a hard edge. It's going to influence kind of negatively, in my opinion, some of the shading that happens inside the scene itself. Whoops, a little too close. Okay. So if I select my hard edges again, yeah, maybe and now you have to start asking yourself, how do you want the computer to shade around, to smooth out the transitions between all these surfaces? Where do you want your smoothing to start and stop? I want mine to be kind of this chiseled shape, as if maybe it's banged out. So I want that one to be smooth and that one to be smooth. So what I'm telling the computer is that I want you to smooth from here all the way around that polygon and that polygon, but stop its smoothing evaluation at that edge loop over there. So I'm going to soften this edge. And this is the button that allows us to do it inside of our vertex map tools. And you can see almost immediately the results happen in front of you. Did you guys see it?
Yeah.
Let me go back. So now it's all, this is with that center loop selected, and it's smoothing set to hard. The computer's smoothing from there and stopping, right? It's going from that edge loop to that edge loop and stopping once it hits another hard edge. Same with this over here. It's smoothing from there to there. I want it to smooth from there all the way to there. Okay, make this a little softer. So by selecting it and choosing this button, I'll jump out so we can see it. Do you see it? Now it looks like it's a little bit more of a smooth shape. Okay. Do the same thing for the other side. Smooth it out. Yeah, and I'm liking that. I might do all these real fast. Luckily for us, it only takes but a minute. Smooth it out. There we go. Life is good. I'm moving on. All right, one final double check of all my hard and soft edges. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with what I have. Okay, now's a really great time to save this. All right, so we've gone into our other map section and we've defined hard and soft edges. What's the next step? You got it, the tangent basis, which tells both Substance and our baking system how to bake these normals correctly so that they can be interpreted correctly back over in Substance Painter. Okay, it's kind of like, it's almost like a definition of all of our edge and vertex normals. Okay, now luckily for us, we can do this pretty easily right here. This button in our vertex map tools. Okay, now I want the MIC tangent basis. This is the tangent basis that Substance Painter understands and adopts. So this is the one we're going to use. Whoop. And if we go over and look at it, yeah, you can see that now we have that tangent basis included inside of our system. If any Foundry developers are listening to my live stream, you should tell me which tangent basis that is. That'd be very helpful. Just tell me which one I have is good. Okay, or tell me that I have one is good, but which one would be even better? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, Foundry developers.
Yeah,
I think it replaces. I think you're only allowed one tangent base.
Okay, so if you're not sure if you have to make one, just like this.
Yeah, in the big picture. All right, save my project file real fast, and now we can start the fun stuff, the baking. I want you to go over for a second and consider how we've been, or what we've been doing in Substance Painter. If you look at a lot of the prep work for our model, it's been masking, right? A lot of masking. Hopefully a lot of masking, because that's the most powerful part of our production pipeline over inside of Substance Painter. One of the things that Substance Painter does a poor job of is selecting things, selecting polygons, in all honesty. Yeah, it doesn't do such a hot job at it, right? Especially if you look at their selection model, it's a select through selection model. So if you're left clicking and dragging out a selection box in Painter, yeah, you're selecting the one that's in front of you, but you're selecting everything that's in that row, right? Everything that's inside that selection window, and that can definitely pull your hair out. It gives you some gray hairs pretty quickly, right? So one of the things that we can do inside of Modo, and is supported inside of Substance Painter, is to create some selection maps from our geometry itself, okay? Maybe we have the computer automatically go in and make some masks based off of color, okay? And it's really easy to do this. What we're going to be creating today is called a surface ID map, and we're going to be able to extract and create texture information from our geometry here inside of Modo, and it's really, really easy to do this, okay? So we're going to create a texture, okay? A 2K texture that we're going to use as part of our entire production pipeline over in Substance Painter. The purpose of this is to make masking inside of Substance Painter really easy and really fast. This is a really simple example, and really simple, intentionally. But when you're working on a really detailed mess, believe it or not, 80% of your time is masking. So if I can reduce that time period to get to a place where I can start texturing, I'm going to do that. Yeah, there's only maybe a dozen UV islands on this bad boy, if that. Yeah, maybe right around a dozen. I've worked on projects where where you can't see the boundary between the UV islands. It's just like it's just like all UVs inside the grid, and you can't tell the difference between where one stops and another one where another one begins. So this idea makes texturing big things really, really quick and really, really easy. Okay, let's go ahead and do it. It's pretty fun. We're going to go into the Baking tab inside the Game Tools area. Okay. Now there's a lot in here, and we're going to be looking at some of these other features towards the end of class today, but we're going to start with the Baking Wizard. Okay. This Baking Wizard makes it really, really easy for us to go in and extract some information. Now, I got so excited about baking, I jumped ahead a little too much, okay? Because I forgot to create some materials, because the Surface ID render output requires a material to differentiate all these different objects from each other. Okay, so now I'm thinking in textures, like what do I want these materials to be? I know that I want all my chain links to be the same material. Okay, I'm going to select them and just hit 1 or M, and I'm just going to hit the number 1. The name of the material does not matter. Fundamentally does not matter. Let's see. I think I want to have, of course, all of this jazz in here. This is going to be another material. I want this to be kind of like a wooden frame. So put those polygons in their own material. There we go. All right. And let's see. Now I want to start, these guys I want to have in their own material. So this will be our third one. Like I said, the name of the material doesn't matter at all, okay? Because what we're looking for is just to make to separate them from each other with material tags. So I got the wood as 1. Let's do this. I'm going to hit the 4 key and select things by material. Yeah, and then I want all of those polygons to be in their own material. There we go. Now to give you a preview, an idea of what we're doing here, let's do this. In the bottom of my layout, they actually give us an option to look at the preview window, which is pretty cool. Okay, there's my UVs, which are kind of fun. It's one of the cool things about working inside of Modo is you get to see a lot of this stuff inside the preview window as a whole, which is pretty fantastic, actually. Okay, you actually get to see what your bake looks like. Okay, so there's a couple things in here that I want to do. Okay, what we're going to use and what we're going to be baking to is a render output called Surface ID. It's pretty fantastic. So I'm going to change my alpha output. Let's just change its role from alpha, and it's under the geometry section, Surface ID. Please note this is not segment ID, very different. Surface ID looks at the material tags. Let's go ahead and fire it in. And I want to change my preview window to look at that Surface ID. Now, if you look very carefully at what's going on here, kinda, yeah, and we're going to fix some of this here in a minute, right? What's going on here is that the Surface ID render output is looking at all the polygons that have been extracted from each other with the different materials inside of our shader tree, and then it's just randomly assigning those polygons a color. I don't care what color they are, because I'm going to use this as a selection basis over inside of Substance. It's pretty neat. It's very neat, actually, right? Because I want to be able to go in Substance Painter and say, okay, all of the polygons or all of the pixels inside the texture map that are this lovely shade of magenta, let's call it magenta, right? All the polygons that are magenta, I want you to look like wood. All the polygons that are yellow, I want you to look like metal, okay? And it's going to do the masking for me very quickly, just based off of color information.
What did you do to the alpha output?
I changed its role. Its effect. I'm sorry, I misspoke. So right here, it used to say alpha. If you go into the geometry section, it's Surface ID.
And then what?
So good question, right? Because we were
Colors.
so if you want to see the colors in your preview window, you just change the preview window's effect from final color. Okay, that's what the final color render output looks like, to Surface ID. Now, while we're here looking at the preview window, we actually get to see some of the problems that are coming out. Yep, here we go. Thank you. Not really, yeah. Although that's pretty neat too, because we can bake vertex color information in there. This is more kind of a texture-based selection system. Thank you, Michael. All right, now I've zoomed in on a part of my UV map here, and what do you see that's wrong? What looks odd to you? Yeah, and Catherine's right. There's some overlap happening within our islands, and we need to fix this. Now, this is one of those gray areas inside of our institution, and some people have already changed this setting on your local machines and in the design lab. This is the parameter that drives that overlap. It's called the UV bake border size. Okay? If you look at the raw UV information that's coming from our UVs, naturally my UV islands are not at all overlapped. Okay? They're close. Okay? Down here, they are super close inside of my UV space, but they're not overlapping at all. But what the computer is creating in this texture is overlapping. You can see it really intensely here. I need to go in and fix this. Okay. Now, this is driven by our UV bake border size. It's really, really easy to change this value, but it requires us to go into our global Modo preferences. So global Modo preferences. Okay. A little popover will pop in. And it is under final rendering. UV bake border size. Right now it's set to 3. Let's put this at 1. Okay? What this is actually driving is a pad, a 1-pixel pad that goes around each one of our UVs. Okay? Now we want this pad. I could put this value to 0, And now there's not going to be any sort of pad between the UVs, okay? It's going to look at the outline of all of my UVs and only create texture and pixel information in those boundaries, okay? This is probably a really bad strategy because we can get some leakage inside the actual UV shells themselves. It's in your global Modo preferences. So Modo preferences. This is exactly what causes you to get white spots. Okay, there's a hole in your UV shell. Because remember, this is kind of the challenging thing, and I remember it being a challenge for my little pea brain to kind of wrap my head around this initially. Okay. Remember, we're creating a pixel grid of colors. That's what a texture is, right? It's just a piece of graph paper. Now, if I have a circle, okay, if one of my UV islands is a circle like this, there's still a rectangular pixel grid behind it that's creating its colors, right? So you have a grid like this of pixels. Now, at times, like in the corners, for example, okay, this could be, where we have an opening here. This will, if I want my circle to be red, all of this jazz in here, these will be red, okay? But the areas that don't have, where the UV island kind of splits a pixel, okay? A pixel can only be one color, right? So this rectangle is either all going to be red or it's not going to be red. It'll be transparent, okay? If the computer goes in and says, hey, I'm going to make this transparent, now my circle is not going to look like a circle at all, right? It's going to have a big hole in it, okay? This is kind of one of the challenges. So this UV baked border size pushes the baked outline, the baked shell, if you will, of all of our UVs out by a defined pixel amount, okay? At 0, we're going to have holes in our image itself. Actually, let me show you what it looks like when it's at 0, just so you guys can get an idea. And then we'll go back in and check it, because this is a problem that folks run into from time to time. Okay. All right. Oops. All right. Now the preview window is probably not honoring that UV baked border size. Yeah, it's definitely not previewing here. But we'll see this when we bake it here in a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and start baking this stuff. Now that we have the Surface ID render output inside of our system, we can access it and use that, or we can bake its information into a texture. And we start off with the baking wizard, and it's really easy to get this going here. The baking wizard kind of steps you through this entire process. It's really simple. So this is going to be the name of the file that you create. Now in this moment, we're creating a texture, physically a texture, okay? So I'm just going to call this sign Sur ID. This is the location that's going to be saved, and I'm just going to put it on my desktop for the time being. Of course, we also have a height and a width. Let's just put this to 2K for the time being. And of course, naturally, we're going to need to tell it which UV map to use. I've intelligently named our UV map sign, right? And this is the distance. The distance is not important for Surface ID. It will be for normal map here in a minute. And then we can also ask it to apply this automatically to a material inside of our Modo shader tree. Yes, ma'am?
So you want it to be Targa?
Or PNG. I forgot to change it, thank you. TIFFs, Targas, and PNGs, those are the files that we want to work with. JPEGs are grossly compressed. TIFF, Targas, and PNGs are great file formats.
So what is an option between regular and 16-bit? Is there one that you prefer?
I go regular. I don't do anything in 16-bit unless I really need it to be 16-bit. The file size is going to get pretty intense pretty quickly. And if you don't know the benefits of working in a 16-bit workflow, you're not going to take advantage of it.
I got lost in the last 30 seconds. How did you even get all that? Did you press Baking Wizard?
Baking Wizard, you got it.
Oh, okay.
This is the Baking Wizard, and it kind of steps you through. I even love how they have a big button that says next step.
Change file name, just bake.
I changed. I did sign Surface ID. This is the name of the file that's physically going to be created in here. Name of the file, type of file, location of the file. That's what those first 3 rows are responsible in creating.
Okay, and as you were saying, is it just keeping it default for Targa?
I gotta apologize. My battery on my microphone went dead, so if some of this stuff wasn't in the live stream, I apologize. I have no idea when that turned off. Hopefully it wasn't too far in. I apologize. This is the challenge of being a one-man show. If something goes wrong, like the battery on your microphone dying, you have no one to tell you that it has in fact turned off. But at least you'll get a visualization of this process as well. All right, let's take a break. So it's 2:30. Let's be back in here at 2:45, please.